Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, it's great to have you back. If you're new to the channel, really glad you joined us. Hope you like what you hear. So, our guest today is an awesome guy. He's from Louisiana. He's got his own flooring company. He's written a book, and I just love his approach to life. He's real laid back in how he speaks, but he's anything but laid back in how he attacks the world every day. Tons of valuable lessons to be learned here. He's going to talk us through how he got to where he's at now and some of the things he's learned from that. Going to talk about his book, going to talk about how he started his business, what he's learned from that. Tons of things to learn here. Really excited about having Jake on. Let's bring him onto the program now. So, Jacob, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. It's great to have you on board.
Man, thanks, Joe. But looking forward to this one.
Yeah, me too. We had a great conversation. This was about a month ago now, and like you've got a lot of different experiences in your background. You've built a successful business, but that's after you've tried different things and you've had varying results from those different things. You've written a book, and so like you got a lot of interesting stuff going on, and I think that's it's great to expose our listeners as someone who has kept taking shots and kept taking action, who can talk about what they learned from those things, both the things that went the way they hoped they would, the things that didn't go the way they hoped they would. And yeah, just really excited to have you on the program. With that said, what we usually do is just have our guest kind of talk through at a high level their life. And you can start wherever you want. If it's important to talk about things that happened to you when you were a kid, start there. If you want to start as an adult, start there. It doesn't matter to us. But what we do is do kind of an overview. And then we go back and do a deep dive on stuff and have like much deeper conversations on the things that mattered in your life, what you learned from them, and how you use those learnings as built your life going forward. So the floor is yours, my friend.
All right, man. I guess high level, born and raised New Orleans, Louisiana. 80s baby, 1982. Call it what we thought was middle class. We'll call it now lower middle class these days. So we had what we needed, didn't have much else. And learned real early. I started asking mom for some things, and she said, "You want them, you go out and make the money for them." So real early, 12 years old or so, started hustling. She said, "Call this one, call that one, call this one." Ask them to cut grass, clean garages, clean attics, whatever it takes, whatever they got, go do it for them, right? So learned real early how to hustle, learned real early how to earn. Thanks to my mom, thanks to my parents. Was always a hard worker. That came naturally. So blessed in that aspect. And parents didn't cut me no slack. They made me get out there and get it. So jumped offshore real early in life, right out of high school. Kind of followed in my dad's footsteps for a while. Was really, really cool deal to do in my early 20s. Got to see different parts of the world, went work in Africa for a while and got to travel to some different countries while young and in my 20s. And that was a great experience for me. Learned real early, pretty quickly that I needed to make a move though, or I'd be kind of stuck in that field, and didn't really want to follow my dad's footsteps the whole way of raising kids from an oil rig, right? So knew that, if I was gonna make a jump, needed to make one now. And I was kind of blessed to have a best friend slash big brother mentor, and he owned his own flooring company. And so when I was on my off days from offshore, I'd come in and do some side work with him, and did that long enough that I said, all right, well, I can jump off and make this a career, and kind of call that my Home Depot card in a prayer moment, where I had that's about all I had. I had sunk all my money into a new house, had a fiance, a kid on the way, new truck note, new house note, and Home Depot card in a prayer, and started my flooring business. So that's kind of how I got that start in the flooring business.
Love it. Yeah. So much to talk about there. Let's go back to your upbringing, because I've also had a job since I was 12 years old. And I tell people I say that, and people look at me sideways, and I'm like, It's one of the best fucking things that ever happened to me. And I love how you think about it because I think about it the same way. Um, how did you, didn't sound like it took much convincing for you to get out there and go after what you wanted. You said that kind of suited you well. Why do you think that is? Do you think that's nurture or nature or some combination of both?
I think it's a definitely natural ability. I work harder than most as a on average, and it isn't because I've got this chip on my shoulder or something. So that's always been a natural thing, even when it wasn't even for money. Around the house, I'd have neighbors doing yard work or something, and I'd give them a hand. Like I always had a natural ability, just didn't mind hard work. So I I I'm gonna call that a blessing because you know that doesn't your parents can ride you all you want. It doesn't mean you're gonna be volunteering to do things, right? So I call that a natural gift. But without a doubt, they didn't cut me any slack, and they said, you want it, you go out and get it. So them giving me that hard nosed thing right there also gave me that extra push. And once I learned how to make money, it became natural. All right, you like working, you can make money by working, get out there and get some. And then once you start achieving some of those things and start getting some of those little trinkets that you wanted, right? Then now you know the formula, right? Hard work equals pay equals things you want, right? So, that definitely kind of played in hand with me. And I can say that I've always been good at making it, right? So, I'm gonna call it a little bit of both. I'm gonna call it blessing and family upbringing.
Yeah, I love that. I went through college on a baseball scholarship, and I can remember like it was all I ever wanted to do was play professional baseball. But I can remember being, teenager and in the weight room during the summer when everybody else was at the beach, or I was running stadium stairs while everybody else was partying. I never once thought of it as a sacrifice. I remember telling myself, nobody else is doing what I'm doing. I have such a fucking advantage on other people because they're not willing to do what I'm willing to do. And I think mine is a little bit of both as well. I think I'm hardwired that way pretty naturally. But then similar to you, I can vividly remember my mom just screaming at me when I was 8 years old because I didn't clean the bathroom right. Like, if you do this at a job, you'd get fucking fired. I'm 8. Like, she's pointing at the tub. You'd get fired for that. And she's right. She's 100% right. And it's good for people to struggle. It's good for people to be shown that that's not good enough. You can do better because it's one of the ways we all learn, I think, to push ourselves and to do better. So you were born in 82. I was born in 72. I'm 53. I'd be curious what your take is on today's society as it relates to hard work. I have my own opinion, but I'd love to hear yours first.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, it's becoming diluted with each generation, right? There's without a doubt outliers, and all is not lost, and it is not a hopeless situation. But without a doubt, it's way more watered down with each generation, including, call it your generation probably got a little diluted from your parents' generation and their parents' generation and so forth and so on. And, without a doubt, these kids have it the easiest life that any kid has ever had, which you can't blame them for that, right? It's
Right.
their upbringing, right? They're the ones raised with a phone in their hand and all of these other things, right? So, in many ways, you can't fault them all the way, but without a doubt, this easy. What they say about the tough times make tough men, and easy situations make weak men, and unfortunately, we're kind of getting in that situation. Everything's so easy that it is producing a lot of weak people in these earlier generations. like I said, I don't think all is lost. I know that there's some outliers, and I know that there's still good parents teaching their kids the right values, and they still have good coaches teaching kids the right things, right? So, there's definitely going to be outliers, and I think that those are going to be, and I've heard it said by many times, like those people are going to crush it, right? Because there are so many that are going to be raised in this weak way, right? So, you know, with everything in our world changing as rapidly as it is, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in these next generations, and hopefully that the instillments from our parents and grandparents and everything else still come and don't get completely watered down, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. My biggest problem, or the thing I don't understand, like I don't think it's hard to look at history and you can learn a lot of lessons from how things have gone in the past. Like it's not hard to figure out, in my opinion. And we as a society, you use the word easy, which I completely agree with. We want to make people comfortable all the time. That's not good for people. It's not good to be, you don't learn a fucking thing being comfortable. You
No.
learn when you fight and scrap and claw and struggle. I'm not saying it needs to be Hunger Games or Thunderdome or whatever, analogy that you want to use, but like it's good to fight. It's good to fail. I remember being a kid, if you lost the championship game, your award was watching the first place team hold up a trophy. That was like, you didn't get shit for losing the championship game. Like you took second place, watch the winners celebrate. That was good for us. That was good for me to be in those situations. Cause I was like, fuck, I'm not gonna be standing over here next year. I can tell you that. Like I'm not gonna get this close and fail again. And I think we as a society have tried to set things up so people don't have to struggle. And I don't think that's good for our society at all.
Well, you hit a big nail on the head. Sports in general, is as diluted and as participation trophied as it is still one of the best things any kid can do, right? Real sports at real competitive levels teaches kids that they can start at square one, and if they work hard, they'll get better. They may not be an all-star, they may not make it to the pros, but if they work hard, they get better. And that's a lesson that just so many people, are not fortunate enough to learn. And then when you throw in the fact of having an amazing coach or that kind of figure in your life, that's a game changer. To me, you said baseball. To me, it was wrestling. Wrestling
Mm.
changed my life. I learned more in high school wrestling than I learned in high school any kind of way, right? There's the lessons I learned I would skip school 70% of the time. It's public school, so I still don't know how I passed, but I never missed a day of wrestling, right? It was just something that didn't happen. And the dedication that I learned that and the conditioning that I learned in wrestling that knowing that your body's telling you you can't move. Your body's telling you quit, stop, stop, stop. But when you learn the dedication and the mental fortitude that you know that you can flip a switch and you can go miles when you think you're dead, that's stuff that you don't get in many other things, and those type of sports, martial arts, boxing, wrestling, football, baseball, those kind of competitive things teach you about being able to push those limits when your body's telling you, yeah, I don't want to do this shit. I'm tired. I want to quit. I don't want to run anymore, right? But it teaches you that mental fortitude that you can keep going and don't stop just because you're tired. And
Mm.
so kids that don't have any sports in their life really don't know what that switch is. They don't have that gear. They might have the gear, don't know how to engage it, right? So wrestling to me was everything. I played other sports, but wrestling was the one that just the mental fortitude that I got from that, it's a part of my life that I can't take away from, you know.
Yeah. It's actually a question I ask in interviews. I ask people, did you participate in team athletics as a kid? Like I ask that question in job interviews because I think the skills, like you hit on them, like commitment, dedication, sacrifice, teamwork, willingness to try and fail. Like those are critical things in business, and you learn those things, or you can learn those things in team sports. And I'm such a big fan of team sports for that reason. I think it's wild now that there's a debate about whether biological men should be allowed to participate in women's sports. No, let me answer that question for everyone. No, they should not.
Absolutely not.
If they're men, they should be.
Absolutely not.
And the reason being is women have busted their ass to develop the sports that they play, and now we're gonna fucking make it unfair, and we're gonna take those over too. What the fuck are we talking about? What is wrong with people? I don't get it.
And that's the
I
biggest
don't even know
crock
why
of
we're talking
bullshit out
about it.
there,
Yeah,
you know. Period. Like, yeah, you're gonna let him in my daughter's locker room. He's gonna go change with I got three girls,
yeah.
like they trying to put other men in jail is what they're trying to do because, that's just as a father of three daughters, that's it's absurd. It's
Yeah, it
absurd.
sure is. And look,
You want to be equal and this and that. Well, give them their own league. They need their own league. That's fine. If there's
fine
three
by me.
people in it, so be it. That's their
Mm,
problem. But they're not women or they're not men, and vice versa. They need to be how they're biologically at. And if they want to start a different gender and start a different sport and start a different league with that, so be it. No problem. That's as inclusive as I think it should be. But you're not a girl. You don't play with the girls. Period.
totally
Cut.
agree. And like, just from an everyday society, I don't care. You want to live your life as a woman, but you're a man? Fine. I'll respect that. I got no issue. I'll call you Tammy instead of Tommy. It doesn't matter to me. I want to be respectful. I don't want to fuck anybody over. I don't want to make them feel bad. I'm totally cool with all that stuff. But you're pissing next to me. You're not pissing in there. And you're playing basketball with me. You're not playing basketball over there. That's just, I don't even know why we were talking about it. It's wild to me. But
Yeah,
yeah.
it is. It is. There's a place for everybody, but stay in your place.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly
You
right.
want your own lane, play in it.
Yeah,
Bottom
for sure.
line. You
For
want your
sure.
own lane, play in it. Don't play in somebody else's.
Yes, I'm totally with you. Totally with you. So you said right after you got out of high school, you went out and started working on offshore oil rigs. Man, that's a tough gig.
It's tough. I mean, I loved it. Like I said, I loved hard work, man. It was kind of crazy because I call it kind of the last of the cowboy days when I was out there. So it was early 2000s and offshore commercial work, everything. Safety's always preached as number one. But it wasn't, just because it was preached doesn't mean it was practiced. And
Totally. Yes.
the things that I did out there, I'm lucky I didn't kill myself.
Mm.
Because I would race myself. I would just, I was competitive with my own self. How much work can I do? How fast can I do it? I can climb to the top of the platform without tying off. I don't need a ladder. I can figure out a way, and I would race through it. And just some of the stuff that I did, would never fly now. And with the real safety that they preach out there, they preach it and practice it now, right? But I call it the kind of the last of the cowboy days when I was out there, where the shit that I got away with was ridiculous, and I'm highly lucky I didn't very severely injure myself at any
Mm.
given point in some of the things I did. So I enjoyed the hard work. A lot, I had plenty gigs where there was a lot of demo involved, and I got demo involved in my work now, and I always call it dumb work. Like you don't have to be smart to do demo. You just got to get
Yeah.
after it. You might want to be a little safe, but you don't got to be smart. It's kind of dumb work. I say the same thing in some of wrestling and conditioning and things of that nature. You want to do some dumb work, go do some burpees, right? You don't got to be smart about it. Just get down and stand up, get down and stand up. So um, uh, it Tough work I was never afraid of. I did like it. I did enjoy it. I excelled at it. I really excelled very fast. I was I was young out there, and I became a leader really quickly. And to become a leader at 20 years old, young and cocky and headstrong, the only way to lead older people is by example.
Yeah.
So I had to walk the talk and I had to go out there and outwork everybody. And did most of them like that I got in a lead position in my early 20s? A lot of them didn't. But I outworked them and the boss knew it. And if they didn't want to do the shit that needed to be done, I just let, hey, this guy ain't pulling his weight. And they couldn't say I wasn't, right? So I led by example and I try to teach people that all the time, especially young people with passion and hard work ethic and drive. Like, hey, you want to be a leader, you got to set an example. You can't boss older people around who have more experience than you. They're not going to listen. You have to state what needs to be done and then go out there and outwork them. Go out there and run circles around them. Be respectful, but get your shit done. And what are they going to do? Like, so I learned that lesson early on that, if you're going to be a young leader, you got to lead by example. And it's hard to beat a good example.
Yeah, that's a great point too, because leaders actually don't boss anyone around, regardless of their age. That's not what leaders do, right? Leaders lead. And to your point, by example is by far the best way to do it. So I've been in the grocery business for a long time, 30 plus years, and I climbed the ranks pretty quickly when I was young for exactly the same reasons you did. I just busted my ass and learned everything. Like, you need someone to come in overnight and stock shelves? That's me. Need someone to clean the bakery? I'll do that. Need someone to do whatever, like count bottles. Need someone to decorate the store for the contest that's coming up? I'll come in at night and hang up fucking lays and put up bamboo huts, and don't matter to me what needs to be done. I'll do it. And you learn so much from doing that stuff. But I wound up in a situation where I'm like 23 and I'm, the youngest person there and I'm in charge of everybody. And I learned, I would just, if I got pushback from someone older than me, I would just go say, hey, it's a strange situation. I'm a lot younger, but I'm the person in charge. I can't be successful without you, and you can't be successful without me. What about you helping me do this the right way? Let's work together, figure out how we operate this thing so that we're taking care of customers, we're taking care of the business, and we all get what we want out of the deal. And that worked really well because I involved them. And so I learned pretty early on that if you involve people in the decisions and involve them, like, because they usually know a good way to do things, they just don't know how to implement it or how to provide the leadership to get that done. So if we use somebody's idea, I would say, hey, this is Steve's idea. This is Betty's idea. All I did was, figure out how we do it. Just so we're clear, it was their idea. I got nothing to do with this. But I was always in, going assholes and elbows and doing the work right next to people. And that's a formula that worked really, really well for me as well. And now I'm old. And so I still work hard, but right, wrong, or indifferent, people look at you and go, you must know what you're doing because you've been at it a while. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. 20-year-olds pointing fingers and sitting on their own doesn't get much done, But if you show them what needs to be done and then you work on side of them and you outworking them, it's like I don't want to listen to this young MF, but I guess I better do something if I want to keep my job, you know?
Yeah, totally. What's involved in keeping an offshore rig going? I mean, I've always heard about it being hard physical work. I've heard about it being dangerous, but I don't actually know what needs to be done to keep those platforms operating. How does that work?
Well, there's different stages and different types of platforms. You've got, your high-end, big, deep water things that are really high-end facilities, big shell, stuff. And then you've got a lot of like older, smaller rigs that are just really old and are in bad need of maintenance, right? So there's either on the newer facilities, there's just big upgrades and they'll do a big shutdown and have to, replace some engines or stuff, or these older ones like we were doing that needed complete system upgrades. And I was doing instrumentation and electrical, so we were doing all pneumatic tubing and electrical wire redos and, ripping a lot of stuff out, putting a lot of stuff back. Instrumentation and electrical was the side I'm on, and you've also got like the production side of things that where they got to keep these things pumping. They ain't making money if they're not pumping, right? So,
Mm,
so kind of just maintaining those. So it's either system upgrades, system replacements, or just general maintenance, right? So we were on that side of things. I did kind of both sides where I was working on some of the smaller, older rigs, which I kind of preferred. A lot less supervision and people all over you versus the big, huge, deep water rigs, right? Where they they're really watching every step you make, and a lot more on the line, a lot more stringent, a lot more hurry up and wait type situations, right?
mm.
So the older, smaller rigs, you can just kind of get in there and get what you needed to get done, which is the kind of work I like to do.
Got it. Did you have to do a lot of problem solving? It sounds like a lot of problem solving to me.
Uh, there's some troubleshooting. There's definitely a big troubleshooting side to it. I was in system replacements, right? So it was kind of, I didn't do a lot of the troubleshooting side of it. That's on the maintenance side and the production side of it, where I was like, hey, all of these wires need to be replaced. A to B, get them there, hook them up. So I didn't do a lot of troubleshooting, but there's definitely a side of that for sure.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And you said this took you all over the world. So you worked all over the world doing this stuff, huh?
Well, I got to travel a lot of the world. So I worked in Africa overseas
Mm,
for about a year and a half. And then doing that, you'd fly into different places. You'd fly into Spain, you'd fly into Switzerland, you'd fly into Amsterdam. You'd have these different layovers, and I was always pretty strategic at extending those layovers on the way home. So
yeah, why would you
get a
not?
little
Why would you not
extra
take
and get a
advantage?
later flight 2 or 3 days later.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
So
What
that
a,
was
co-
that was
what a, and
very
this is
cool
all
to
in your
do in my
20s,
early
huh?
20s.
Yeah, hell yeah. What a great experience. That's awesome. And
That was, man. I really, when I see these poor saps that married their high school sweetheart, and like they haven't met another woman. It was the first girl they met in sixth grade. I'm like, oh, I'm glad you love her, man. But man, like I got to sow my oats very well, for quite a long time. So and that's what makes me be able to be content and happy with the beautiful and amazing wife I have now. I have no need for anything else, right? I've been around the world, literally, and for people that don't get to experience some of those things, it's to me it's almost somewhat of a travesty unless it's an amazing situation for them, right? But some people some people never get to leave the damn city or town they grew up in. And I definitely feel like I've truly been blessed to be able to do different things like that and see different parts of the world at an early age, and I still get to do it now, of course, what I've done for myself. But when I see some people that they've barely left their hometown, it's like, man, like you haven't lived.
yeah, they're like this big wide world out there, and you've only tried one little slice of it, man. Like I'm not, and look, I've been married to my wife for 32 years. Like I'm a commitment guy for sure. But, we met and got married. I'd done a lot of shit before we met and got married. And yeah, no, I'm totally with you. And one thing I try to do for our listeners is draw out commonalities we hear from all our guests. So we're fortunate we attract really high caliber people on our podcast, and so they'll come on and talk about their experiences and what they've learned from them and how they've built their lives based on what they learned on those experiences. And I try to draw commonalities because we've had all sorts of people from all sorts of walks of life, and it's super interesting. That's why I love doing the podcast because, like, my real job, I'm still in the grocery business. I do this because I love doing it. But my point to my long-winded diatribe here is you were in those situations and got to do all those experiences because you took action. And it's something we try to convince people all the time. Try. It doesn't fucking matter if it goes the way you want it to or not. But if you don't try, you're fucked already. Like, take your shots, learn from the things that don't go the way you want them to, and enjoy the things that do go the way you want them to. Jacob's a perfect example of a guy who got to experience all this stuff because he took action. And I don't want it to go without saying, because that you'll see that continuing theme as we talk through his life here, right? He's already kind of given us a precursor of starting his business, which is crazy successful now, but started off with Home Depot cart and fingers crossed. And we'll talk about that, talk about that in a little bit. But taking action, taking action, taking action. I can't say it enough. Our podcast episode we released today is called "Do the Thing." Just do the thing, man. Whatever the thing is, do it. Quit procrastinating. Quit thinking about it. Don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. Start. You got to start somewhere. So,
Man,
speaking of which, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Fire away.
I literally had a post 2 days ago, and it was like, you know, listen to your conscience and do it. Right? We all have these pulls, like, oh, it would be nice, or I should, or this or that, and only a percentage of us pull the trigger. Most of our conscience are not telling us life and death situations, right? It's not like, oh, if I do that, I'm gonna die. Like, very rarely is that the case, right? But so very few people listen to that conscience. It's telling you for a reason, right? And I've been truly blessed that I listen. I'm not scared, right? What's the worst can happen? You fall on your face, you lose a little bit of money, you get some mud on your face, something, right? But you're not gonna die, Like, so many people hear it, but they don't follow it. They don't pull the trigger. And I'm just truly blessed that I follow my conscience. I take the chance. I roll the dice. And it doesn't take much for me to do that. Like, it doesn't take much arm twisting. I don't even like the conscience doesn't have to yell at you for months. It doesn't do that. Your conscience just gives you a little subtle hint, right? And it's up to you to, like, oh, what was that random thought? Or was that, no, the shit was telling you to do something. Go do it. Give it a shot. You know? So many people miss those opportunities and they never know. Like, it could be something completely irrelevant to what you think your life's supposed to be. But that little turn, that little thing that you were supposed to listen to was what was going to take you where you were supposed to go. But instead, you'll never see it.
Totally love it. And we talk about this a lot on the podcast, but I talk about it a lot because it's so meaningful. When people are in their dying moments, there's been tons of interviews of doctors and nurses and people who provide end of life care. And so they see literally thousands of people in their final moments on the earth. And they ask them, what do they think about in their final moments? And they always, and I don't often make global statements, but I'll make this one. They always talk about regretting stuff they did not do, not stuff they did do. And it's always, I wish I would have spent more time with my family, or I wish I would have had the guts to pursue the professional career that I wanted to do instead of doing what I was expected to do or other people told me I should do. I wish I'd have had the guts to live the life I wanted to live. And you don't want to be on your fucking deathbed thinking, what if I just asked that girl out? What if I had just applied for that job? What if I had just taken that trip? And it's the problem, and there's a lot of science behind this. The problem comes because when you take an action, you get an outcome one way or another. You might like the outcome. You might not like the outcome. That's okay. But there's finality to it. You can deal with an outcome. When you don't take your shot, there is this endless plethora of things that your mind plays over. Well, this could have happened. That might happen. This could happen. And it'll drive you up the wall because there is no finality to it. You can't bring resolution to it. You can't wrap your mind around it. I always, the last 2 years I played baseball, I was a closer. And I loved that. I wasn't the best pitcher on our team, but I was the right guy for that job because I wasn't afraid of it. And it doesn't sound like much, but I played Division I baseball. And so, like, you could play in front of 3,000, 4,000 people. That wasn't uncommon. And the bottom of the ninth and there's 3,000 people screaming at you and their three best hitters are coming up, that's intense. It's an intense situation. I loved it though, because I didn't want to be sitting on the bench going, fuck, I hope our guy gets this done. I wanted the ball in my hand. Win or lose, I wanted the ball. And I won and lost. By the way, I walked to the bus all by myself plenty of times. It's not a fun job when it goes wrong, but I'd still rather be out there and still accept whatever outcome happens because I was trying my best. And I never wasn't up to the moment. I never just like choked. Sometimes shit didn't go my way. That's okay. But I never just like, oh, I can't do it. I'm too scared. That just wasn't how I was wired. So that's why I was good for that job. But it applies to life, like you just talked about. It applies to
It's
life.
a blessing. You're not afraid to pull the trigger, right? You're
Yeah,
gonna win some, you're gonna lose some. Don't be afraid to pull the trigger because you ain't never gonna know. All you can do is live in regret and mediocrity by not doing it, right? And so many people are stuck in their comfort zone. I'm comfortable enough. I'm not happy, but I'm comfortable, right? Like they wish shit was better, but they don't have the balls to pull the trigger and take the shot because they could fail.
what if I
Okay,
miss?
so what? So what? What's the worst that can happen? You go back to what the fuck you was doing before, you know? So like, yeah, it's one. What gives me that? What gave you that? We don't. It's a blessing, right? Like I think everybody's wired a little bit different, and that's completely obvious, right?
Yep,
Everybody's wired a little bit different, and some of us have that wire, and some of us don't. It is what it is. But man, stick your neck out. Stick your neck out.
that's
If more
right.
people would do that, they wouldn't be sitting on their deathbed in a life of regret. You know.
Yes, completely. That's not where you want to be. I know that for sure. So at some point, how old were you when you said, you know what? I gotta figure out other alternatives. I can't keep doing what I'm doing for the rest of my life, or I don't want to keep doing what I'm doing for the rest of my life. How old were you when you went and talked to your acquaintance about working for him in your off time in the flooring business?
Well, I was working with him in my off time at the same time, right? So offshore,
Yeah.
you typically work schedules 14 on, 14 off, 14 and 7, 21 and 7. Everybody had different schedules. I always worked crazy schedules. I would take people's shifts. So I would work extra shifts, so I'd go like one time I did like 90 something days in Africa where everybody else was working 30 and 14, 30 and 14. I was like taking other people's shifts. But I always worked for him in the off time, whatever that off time was. He wasn't gonna say no if I was off and ready to work because I was a beast, right? So he's
Sure. Yeah.
like, "Come on." It was never a question. He's like, it didn't matter what he had going on. You home, you want to work, let's go, right? So, but I was about 22 when I made that decision. I also I had a hip hop record label going on. So I was started a little hip hop group and we had a record label going on. We started doing some shows and so that was another thing pulling at me, once again, taking a shot, right? We were taking a shot at hip hop superstardom, which would have been really, really cool. Um, and and so that was another thing pulling at me and I just knew that hey, if I'm gonna make that work and if I don't make a change, I'm gonna be stuck out here. I'm gonna start making more money than will be enough to be able to leave, right?
Mhm.
So that I knew that was coming. I was 21, 20 years old, 22 years old, and I was making somewhere around 70 plus grand, which in the year 2000, 2002 for a 20-year-old was pretty damn good money, especially since I didn't have any other bills except for what I was blowing and what I was spending on wheels, right? So, um,
Yeah.
and once again, I listened. Something told me, like I didn't have to listen to that. Most people, not that that money was crazy life-changing money or anything, but it was good money. And most people don't know how to walk away from that, right? Especially not knowing the outcome. It's not like I was walking out of a 70 grand job to walk into an 80. I had no idea what I was walking into, right? And I didn't know jack shit about running a business, right? So,
Right.
but I listened, I listened and I took the chance, right? So, and luckily, when you take those kind of chances, it's kind of back against the wall, right? You don't have any choice once you make the leap, and that's why I also tell people if you're gonna make a big leap, it's easier to make the leap the younger you are. The older you are, the more commitment you have, the more things that you have that, maybe you can't reverse, right? You got the house, you got the wife, you got the kids, you fall flat on your face and you got no backup plan, and that's a problem. But when you do it early in your life, you can fall flat on your face and go back and try something else and go back and try something else. So, like the sooner you make those big leaps, the better. And if you are older and you have all these commitments, then maybe you got to dip your toes in the water a little bit, right? Maybe you got to just test the waters before you make the leap, and then make sure that you can make that commitment, but don't not try it. If you're dying, if it's inside of you, if it's calling you and oh, life would be so great if I did this, I can do that. At least dip your toes in the water. Do it as a side gig. Figure it out, test it out, right? But if you're trying it early in life, you can go all in. And when I did go all in, I didn't have a choice, right? Once I did it, I saved up all my money. I bought a house. I had a fiance. I had a kid on the way. I could have it's a funny story because I had one reoccurring nightmare for the first 5 or 6 years of my business. I would go to sleep and business was failing, and I would call up my old boss and I'd say, hey, I need to come back offshore. And he'd say, no problem. He hired me. I'd go through all of the rigmarole of getting hired back on, and I would go back offshore. And this is the same exact vivid dream every time. And so this is when you would like kind of you would from an offshore phone, you can call your phone and check your voicemail,
Mm.
right? This is kind of before cell phones was like totally how they are now, and the same reoccurring dream every single time. I'd get offshore and I'd call my cell phone to check my voicemail, and it'd be lit up with work, right? As soon as I got back offshore, I had this reoccurring nightmare for years. The exact same thing, vivid as day. I can remember it to this day. I had it for years. And it was essentially my conscience telling me, hey, it's tough. I know you feel like quitting. I know you're scared, but go fucking through it. Keep going. Don't stop. And to this day, I'll remember that nightmare that I had so vividly, so many times. And it was when times are super tough. It's you don't know, and that's also the life of an entrepreneur. Like everybody sees the superstar part of it on Instagram when once you've made it, the extraordinary life that I've built now. But not everybody sees when the lights got cut off, when the water got cut off, when you don't know how you're gonna pay your guys, when your guys get paid first and there ain't nothing left for you, and you're
Yep.
going drowning in debt. And each level you go, it looks like it's all getting better, but you're just getting in bigger levels of debt because you're growing business, right? So like, it's tough and it ain't for everybody, but man, you can't replace it. You can't once you do it, you're never going back. And that's what that nightmare was telling me. Like, all right, you can go back. It's always there. You can go back, but don't do it. Keep going, you know?
Right.
And so that was my conscience telling me that. And once again, like that was a nightmare reoccurring, but it was a blessing, and I listened to it, you know?
That's awesome. So, did you? I know that you do a special kind of flooring. Now, we'll talk about that. Talk about the flooring company you've got now. So let's start there.
Yeah, so we're Extraordinary Flooring. We are polished concrete and resinous coating specialist. And resinous is a fancy term for epoxy, right? Most people hear epoxy, but we do. Resinous is anything liquid. You pour two liquids together, they get hard. You get them on the floor. That's a resinous coating, and we run the gauntlet in resinous coatings and polished concrete. We are predominantly commercial. But we also do industrial, we also do residential, light commercial, retail, to big heavy industrial stuff. But all things polished concrete, all things sealed concrete, decorative concrete, and resinous coating. So that's where we are, specialty trade. I didn't get my start in that type of flooring. I got my start in traditional flooring, tile, wood, marble, residential style, that. But once I started diving into this decorative and different world, that's where I said, okay, well, there's a million tile installers, there's a million people doing wood and carpet, and you're just another guy with a trowel. Whereas with this stuff, you can be different, you can be special, and you can be, pun intended, extraordinary at it, right? So that's where I hung my hat, and that's where I knew I could separate, and we have, and we're definitely, I think we're the biggest in the state, which is, saying a good amount, and we're definitely among the top, and it's, 22 years in, right? So we're blessed to be in that position.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that was what I was going to ask you is the company you were working at before, did they do those same type of floors or were they more of a generalist and or different types of flooring?
Yeah, no, he was strictly just residential tile and wood and stonework, right? So that was just, standard, it was all nice stuff, right? He always worked in
Sure.
nice homes, but you just tile and wood, right? So it wasn't anything to do with that. Kind of funny story. When I started, once I quit offshore, I worked with him for I started working for him for full time just a few months, and I said, look, man, I'm not even going to ask you to pay me what I know I need to make. I'm not even going to ask you, so I got to go on my own. I
Yep.
love you, I don't mean no ill, but I'm not even going to begin to ask you what I know I need to make in order to pay my bills, right? So I got to go on my own. And uh and once I did, I really quickly kind of discovered the world of decorative concrete, which is more like acid staining and stained concrete, a little bit different than most of the work we do. But I learned that, and I was like, "Hey, man, I'm going to this class for stained concrete," and he was like, I ain't starting nothing new, right? His old dog didn't want no new tricks, right? He was the boss at what he was, right? So he
Sure.
wasn't willing to step down and learn something new, right? Whereas, I had no problem. I was still a little dog on the block. I was trying to learn everything I could, right? So it was kind of a pivotal moment that I'll never forget, because I told him, hey man, you want to come to this with me? And he's like, no, I ain't going to learn something new. I'm not starting from the bottom again. Like, okay, I understand, but that led me into everything else, this whole world that I'm in now, just from, taking a class on stained concrete, it just led me into stamped concrete, led me into polished concrete, led me into epoxy coatings, urethane cements, all of the things we do, right? And it's definitely more of a specialty trade. And there's, while there is competition, it's nowhere near as much competition as, just the traditional flooring, right? There's just so much. It takes quite a bit of an equipment investment to get into my trade versus the tile guys these days. They don't even buy a tile saw. The tile guys these days buy a scriber and a grinder, and they're like, "Oh, I'm starting my business," and
Yeah,
they got
right.
they got $95 worth of equipment invested. So to get into my business, you got to drop a couple coins onto the equipment, which helps out in the competition world.
Yeah, the high barrier of entry is always a good thing when you're building a business. So if you've got a high barrier, so like I've worked both sides of grocery. So there's the retail side, which is where you go to buy your groceries, and then somebody's got to get all those groceries there. So that's the wholesale side. And I've worked both for a long time. And the barrier of entry for retail is very high because you've got to buy refrigeration cases, you've got to light your store in a certain way, you've got to do certain things to meet health codes. Like it costs a lot to build out a grocery store. They're the second most expensive commercial building right behind hospitals. Just in terms of building, because they've got so much refrigeration in them, they've got so much HVAC in them. You got to get your condensate lines out. You've got to have plumbing in your produce department, in your meat department, blah blah blah. But in wholesale, you can literally sublet warehouse space, hang up a shingle, and call yourself a wholesaler. Now, it's a difficult business to understand and make money in because the margins are super low. So you have to build your volume up quickly because the only way to make money is a high volume. You can't make it. It's not like a tech company or a drug company where, hey, I'm going to discover something that cures cancer or Ozempic, right? And those guys are getting, everybody else is getting skinny and nobody knows what the true health costs are. I just cringe when I hear people talking about Ozempic because they have no fucking idea what 10 years from now is going to look like. Maybe they'll be fine. I don't know. Maybe they'll have liver cancer. I don't know. I ain't going to find out. I can tell you that. But the drug companies are getting rich as fuck off of those things. And there is no such thing in grocery. Like it's milk and green beans and paper towels and cereal, you make a couple of nickels on everything. And you just got to sell a lot of it to make money. So I love that in your business, you were thoughtful about that higher barrier of entry to get going in it. But that also makes it pretty fucking white knuckle at the start, doesn't it? You had to have some sleepless nights and chewing on your fingernails for a while there when you're getting your business going.
We'll call it way more than just the start. We've been white knuckling it for a while. You white knuckle, then you it's like icy highway. It's like oh, it's all good, and then it's oh shit, and then it's all good, and then it's oh shit, and then it's like the white knuckle is way more than just the start. I tell people there's levels to it. And these days I cherish the levels because I always tell people anytime I get to my brokest points, maxed out on credit, maxed out on money, don't know like, oh shit, how's this gonna happen? I know I'm breaking a new level, right? And most people think, and I did at many times earlier in my career that, oh shit, this is bankruptcy, this may be the end. I never really thought that. It was always oh shit moments, but I never thought that. But now these days, I like get excited. It's stressful, but I get excited because I know I'm breaking a new level. Like anytime, it's like, at one point it's like, oh, why you broke? Oh, because people owe me 60,000, and then, oh, why you broke? Because they owe me 300. Oh, why you broke? Because it's 600. Oh, why you broke? Because it's 1.5, like it just grows, right? So it's just broke at different levels. So you white knuckling don't stop. And you ask any major entrepreneurs, look at Elon Musk. You think he made it, right? Well, how many times did he almost die, at
Yep.
these major levels, right? So it ain't just the start and it ain't never finished, new levels, new devils, and growth is, there's a reason they call it growing pains, because when you're growing a lot, that shit hurts, it's never easy, in any level of business. So definitely more than just the start. I'm in a good phase right now. But I've been through, a couple of those, what we call, kind of business break points, where so many people get to those break points, at some points it's, some people it's 100,000, some people it's 500,000, some people it's 1 million, then it's 3 million, then it's 7 million, then it's 10 million, right? Where it's like, you feel like you're breaking and you got to make this decision. Are you going to rebuild and grow stronger? Or are you going to break down and revert back to where you were comfortable at? And that's where you find those tolerances in business that you have, and you find those pain thresholds that you have. And that's where the strong get stronger, or the weak revert back to where they were, right?
Yeah, I bet you that wrestling background helped out a lot in those situations because how many times were you doing whatever, doing your, cutting weight or getting ready for a match or working on uh, uh, takedown defense or whatever, and you just want to like, fuck this, I'm dead, and your mind's got to take over and override your body. At that point, it had to be similar when you were at those inflection points in your business.
Other than my parents, there's nothing more important in my life than what wrestling did for my life. I can
Mm.
tell you that, like bottom line, and it's just high school wrestling. It wasn't even
Yeah,
college,
right.
man.
I
It's
get
just
it.
high
It doesn't
school
matter though.
wrestling.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's not about the level. It's about the lesson.
Yeah. Those lessons that I learned there are without a doubt, I would not be the same person. I would not be as strong as I am. You know, maybe if I did a different sport, maybe I could have got some of the same similar things, right? But I played rugby, I played baseball, I played basketball, I played track or did shot put and all these other sports. Nothing did what wrestling did for me, and it's just a different level, and without a doubt, it's a huge reason that I am who I am and can push and have those pain tolerances that I have without a doubt. Because like your pain, you want to quit, but wrestling teaches you to keep going, or good sports or a good coach, a good mentor, right? All of these people can these things can guide you and help you keep going when everything in your body and mind is saying, "Oh, we got to stop here," right? But having those right things in your life is what teaches you that you can go through this pain. You can go through those and to go back to what we were saying, these kids not having to go through any pain. What happens when shit gets tough? They're not going to know how to deal with it.
Yep.
That's I seen like a meme the other day on like Instagram or something like, we'll never have any hand-to-hand wars anymore. Like imagine like the majority of our teenagers and early 20s having to do hand-to-hand combat, right? What percentage of that generation right now could do well in hand-to-hand combat with, let's just say, a bunch of Russians or a bunch of trained killers, right? Like
Yeah.
there's people raised in the mountains, those damn all of those uh, Russians that are killing the MMA game and stuff, like they are raised still tooth and nail tough, and we just don't have that same level of toughness being in the majority of the percentage of our kids and our youth, and to some point that a lot of that is definitely sad and could be a detriment, you know.
Yeah. I hope we find a way to recapture it. But look, the only way to recapture it is to go through the crucible. Like there's no shortcuts for it, right? You've got to like the episode I was telling you we published today. We talk about the repetitions are what build the confidence. There's no substitute. You can't think your way to confidence. That's not how it works. You can't fool yourself into confidence. There is no actual fake it till you make it. You got to try and learn and fail and apply those learnings to future endeavors, which brings me to, so you had mentioned earlier when you started this business, you'd never owned a business before. You had no fucking idea how to start or run a business. What did you focus on? What was your primary focus from the beginning? Let's start there. What was the one thing you said, if I just figure out how to do this, I might be okay?
Well, I tell you, the biggest game changing thing that happened, and it could seem so small back then, 20 something years ago, but the small ripple that changed my flooring business is the whole reason that I am this thing right now. Make it extraordinary. And I had started my flooring business and I wasn't completely busy. And anytime I wasn't completely busy, I'd call the old boss and say, "Hey, can I come do some pickup work with you?" And he would usually oblige. And one of those days, I'm riding in the back of his work van, sitting on a flipped upside down Home Depot bucket. And it was after work. We worked hard. And I said, "I got it." And he said, "I got what?" I said, "I got the name of my new business." He said, "What?" I said, "It's Extraordinary Flooring." And he looked at me, kind of side-eyed me. He's like, "I don't know, that's a little much." I said, "It didn't matter. That was the name of my business." And the first name was Big Jake's Affordable Flooring. And let's just say, I thought all right, well, I'm starting a business underneath my big brother, my mentor, right? I don't want to step on his toes. And that was kind of my way of like he was doing high-end flooring. And I was like, well, let me start a business without trying to step on my mentor's toes, right? So
Mm,
Big Jake's Affordable Flooring was born. And all I was doing was affordable flooring, right?
yeah.
The cheapest jobs, the cheapest people, like looking for the cheapest, most least expensive thing they can do, right? And some of the shittiest jobs I could think of doing is what I was getting, you know? And
Right.
when I had that aha moment, once again, I listened to my conscience. I had the aha moment in that van, riding home in the evening. I could have blew it off and said, "Oh, that'd be a nice name," or what. But listen to your mentor who kind of side eyed you, right? I could have listened to him and be like, "Yeah, maybe he's right. Maybe that's too much," but I didn't. I listened to myself, and that changed like instantly. Within 6 months, we were doing extraordinary flooring. We were doing $1 million mansions. We were doing big, huge, extraordinary work. We were no longer doing these bullshit Section 8 apartments and dirty bathrooms and stuff like that. We were doing extraordinary work. And so that flipped that switch, and it was a mindset, right? And did I all of a sudden start dropping a bunch of dollars on advertising and this big extraordinary flooring billboards and stuff? No. I changed the name. I didn't even change a business card. I didn't even do it legally on with the state yet.
Yeah.
So this was just a perspective shift. And so that's what I tell people, like, man, just because I switched that perspective, I didn't do anything else different. And the world started shifting in my favor because I listened to it, I believed in it, and it changed things, and things start coming into your life. You got to believe in those things and then go after them, and you start attracting these things. Like I didn't do anything else. I didn't do any advertising to make that happen. I simply made a name shift, which made a perspective shift, which started shifting things in my life, and they started coming into favor that way, right? And then so from there, it was the name is Extraordinary Flooring. This is what we're going to deliver no matter what. I created a standard for my business, right? And that's what it was. We're not ordinary flooring. We are extraordinary flooring. So I it can't be a name. This has to be a standard, right? So it created that standard. And that's the way we lived. And then I just kept that same hard ass work ethic that I got. And like here's the standard. I'm a man of my word. I'm gonna deliver. We make a promise. We're gonna make it happen, and I'm gonna bust my ass to do the best of my ability to make it happen in that way. And that's what created the momentum, and that's what carried it. I didn't start being smart in business till way later, right? I just had sheer, I had work ethic and determination. That's what I had, and that's what grew my business. Like I always, like I said, I was a hustler. In teenage years, I hustled things I should have been hustling and things I shouldn't have been hustling.
Right.
But but I knew how to make money, but I didn't know how to keep it. And just because you're bringing in a bunch of revenue doesn't mean you're making the proper profit. So plenty
Absolutely.
of times, I tell people all the time now that I'm, quote unquote, one of the big dogs out here, when a young guy comes in and swoops under and steals a job or gets a job, and you find out like he ain't even gonna make no money on that job.
Yeah. He buys a
But they
job.
don't know that, right?
Yeah.
Because they're young in business. It seems like a lot of money, but they don't know what it's actually gonna cost them to get the job done.
Yep.
Right. So I was like, you know what? I did the same thing to plenty of people. Like I was looking at that big job and seeing those big price tags, but seem like you're gonna make a lot of money, but you did a lot of work and made a little bit of money. And then somebody else who knows what it actually costs, like you dumb ass, that shit should have been 50 grand more. Like, so when the I just had this conversation the other day. So when the young and hungries come and swipe a job from me, I can't get mad at it because I did the same thing, right? And not knowing what that job actually costs, right? Not having that business acumen and knowing what not only what it takes to do the job and make profit, but also what it takes to run your business, also what it takes to run your life, right? So people don't know how to put all of those factors in there to knowing, like when some of these guys say, "Oh, how much should I charge for this?" Well, what I charge and what you charge is two different things. What does it cost you to live? How many jobs can you do a week? Oh, I could do one job a week. All right. Well, what's your bills for the month? That means, oh, you got 10 grand in bills a month. And that means you got to make at least 2 grand to live each week. Right. So, people don't have all of those costs involved. Right. So I don't even know what got me on that rant, but
No, I totally love it. And just a couple of comments while you were talking. So on the pricing thing, like I try to explain to people, the problem with winning the race to the bottom is you still lose. So if you commoditize your business and it becomes entirely about price, then you have very fickle customers and it's very difficult to make money because you're always trying to cut it to the bare bone. And if anything goes wrong, you can't absorb it. And that's the problem with, like you're talking about, the shitty ass jobs. I at one point had I've flipped, I don't know, about 40 houses, and I had a construction company where I was like, you know what, I can do this for other investors. And I refuse to work with investors ever again because they think they're the only ones that should be allowed to make money. And like, I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, and they're like, well, can't you just pay someone X? And I'm like, dude, there's two Amazon facilities in Cleveland, Ohio. They pay you $18 an hour to literally show up and put boxes in a fucking bin. Like, that's what they do. So, no. And by the way, I know you don't think it's very difficult to understand how stuff needs to be wired in a house or how plumbing needs to run to work properly, or HVAC. Oh, by the way, if you fuck up HVAC or electric, the house can catch fire. Everyone can die of carbon monoxide poisoning. So it's kind of important to get it right. And it's very specialized training that takes years to understand. You need to pay the appropriate amount so you have professionals who are doing it correctly and safely. And no, I'm not willing to cut my price because you want to make a couple more bucks. Go fuck yourself. I'm not doing it. But when I was young, I was like, sure, I can find someone to do it for that price. No, the guys you can find for do it that price won't do it right. You put people at risk if you're willing to do that. And I did it exactly one time, and I'm like, this is wrong. Like, I knew enough about electric and HVAC to go, this is wrong. Somebody's going to get hurt. We can't do this. And I took the loss on that project because I paid guys more than I charged. Like, you do what you got to do, but I wasn't going to, I always thought about it like, some kid's going to sleep in this bedroom. Am I willing to put some kid's life at risk over money? Fuck no, I'm not. Absolutely not. I would never do that. And so you made an agreement. You got to live up to the agreement, and you learn the lesson, and you move on. But that's how I got good at it, by being in those situations and figuring it out. And that's why I was laughing just when you were talking about it. I've been there, man. I've been there where you finish a job and you're like, how did I just do a fucking $120,000 rehab and I don't have any fucking profit? What the fuck happened? How did I fuck this up this bad? You know? And it's not hard to do when you're first starting out. It's not hard to do.
no. You see the big dollar sign and you think there's got to be money left in that. It's 120 grand. Of course I can make money here, and then you don't add up all the little shit, not to mention that you got to live during this whole thing. And if that's how you're living, guess what? You're fucking eating up that money every day that passes. And people don't understand that, it's also like, all right, well, I don't go, if you don't go to work that day. Well, if you don't have any overhead, great, no problem. You didn't make no money, you didn't spend no money, but that ain't the way the life works. Everybody has overhead, whether it's business overhead or life overhead. You don't go to work that day, that means you got to make twice that amount tomorrow, right?
Yep.
And if you are not calculating those life expenses in there, those are nibbling at those profits every day. It's not like your life expenses are waiting, for the end. And, no, they're nibbling all the whole damn time. So like, but you
Yeah.
have to understand not only your hard costs, labor and materials, you got to understand your business overhead, advertising, rent, blah, 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 tools, this, that, and the other. And you also gotta factor in your life expenses, because The shit costs money. You can't go anywhere. I don't, some like my mom's the queen of going places with no fucking money. Like I can't leave the damn house without spending a couple $100. I'm like, I don't even know. She'll go to like a different country with like 20 bucks in her pocket and come back with change. I'm like, how the fuck did you do that? Like she's a travel agent, so she is the queen of doing that. I'm like, I don't even know. Like I'll like wire some money. I'm like, just I don't care if you use like I'm not sending you. Back in the days, I just be flabbergasted how she did it. Now I just send her some money. Like I'm not letting you do that.
Oh my gosh, totally. I love it. What has been the biggest surprise to you about owning your own business? What were you the least prepared for, you didn't understand fully that you understand now?
Definitely what we just explained, like total cost, right?
Mm, yep.
Like total cost without a doubt, like not understanding every bit of what your costs are and what actually making money is and means. And what I mean, like when I got started in the flooring, like, oh, everybody laid tile for $2 a foot. That was like, oh, you couldn't charge more. Like it's $2 a foot. It was 250 if you laid it on a diagonal. It's like, well, all right, well, that doesn't work the same way. Like what it used to cost me to do a job. Like now, when we do these, I'm geared to do huge. I could do an Amazon place if they get me. That's one of the goals. I'd love to get one.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I can still do. I'm nimble enough to do a bathroom, but in epoxy, a lot of times it'll be like 5 steps. It might only, if it's a small bathroom, it might only take 2 hours each step, but I still got to send a guy there for 5 days.
5 times. Yeah, right.
So like when people say, well, how the hell does this 200-foot bathroom cost 5 grand? I'm like, well, I got to send 2 guys there for 5 days and I got to pay for materials and I got to make money. That's why it costs 5 grand. So like not everybody has to understand their individual cost, right? And like I said, early on, I always knew how to hustle, but I didn't necessarily know how to make real profit and enough profit to where you had profit left over, something to do something with. So that was definitely the biggest thing that I had to learn is understanding the true numbers that you had in life and having those total numbers together to know what it costs you to make money, you know, because it costs you money to make money. They say some people try to get around and say, "Oh, it don't take money to make money." Yeah, it takes money to make money. But everything has a cost. It takes money to make money. Like yeah, there's ways you can start at a low barrier entry, but to make real money, yeah, it usually costs money.
Yeah, I love that. Flipping it around, I was a buyer in the grocery industry for several years. And so you negotiate with vendors all the time. Like, and I did private label, and that, so private label is you go to wherever, I'm trying to think of whatever, Tom Thumb, and you got Tom Thumb cornflakes, right? Somebody makes that for the company. And so I did that at the wholesaler I worked at. And one of the things I learned as a buyer that I try to explain to people the way I think about it, and clearly I think I'm right because this is the way I think about it, but I do have a lot of experience with it,
Yeah.
is there's three verticals that you have to consider as a buyer: price, service, and quality. And your job as a buyer is to maximize all three verticals. You have to consider all three verticals. So when you were talking about guys coming in and underbidding, I call it buying business. Like all they're doing is buying business, right? They're investing some of their profit to buy the business and get their foot in the door. I get that. I can respect that. But I also have a responsibility to look at the service and the quality. So let's just say that I'm buying product X and there's three vendors involved, and one vendor is $2 a unit cheaper than on product X and the other two. It instantly concerns me because it makes me worry about both their quality and their service. And so I'm going to want a plant tour. I'm going to want to go see how you make it. I'm going to go want to see what your sanitation standards are. I'm going to want to see what your cleanliness standards are in your facility. I want to see how people are dressed. I want to see how your safety standards are. And then I want to see your service levels, because If I can get it for $2 a unit cheaper, but I got to wait 3 more weeks every time I order it because you're not making it until I order it and I can't get it in 2 days like I need it in the grocery industry, that doesn't really help me. And so I learned through experience, like I've made the mistake of saying, oh, that guy's way cheaper. I'll go with him. And all of a sudden you realize this guy's caught a tiger by the tail and he won a bid he didn't expect to win or didn't understand very well. And he can't service the business. And so I try to explain that to people a lot as a buyer, and the same for homeowners. You're a buyer in those instances. And if you've got multiple bids, you can't just look at cost. I get it if cost is cheap. However, there's probably a very good reason why that guy is cheaper than everybody else. And it's probably not good that he's that much cheaper than
There's a
everybody
price
else.
that comes with that.
That's right.
People, that's
It
the
gets real
unknown
expensive
cost.
to be cheap. Yeah.
There's the old adage, the old sign you would see. You can pick two out of the three, good, fast, and cheap, but you can't have all three of them.
That's right.
You can't get all three. And same thing. I had this conversation with my guys today. We are always we shut down a job, right? We got to do the floor, so we shut down a job. So
Yeah.
contractors hate it, businesses hate it. Like all of these other trades, they can stack multiple trades on top of each other and they're all working together. And we're
Yep.
like, nope, it's my floor. Nobody can walk on it for a week. And it kills them, right? So they always put us in crazy predicaments. A business owner never wants to be shut down. So they're always pushing us for crazy deadlines. And I tell my guys, and sometimes they bend. So you made the deadline, but our quality sucked. Like we have a standard. This is extraordinary flooring, right? If they're only going to give us so much time, they have to sign off that we cannot give them the quality that is our standard because to
Yep.
give you the standard that you hired us for, this is how long it takes. You can't have all of the above. You can't, and we still in that battle. Like we fight to be the best with the highest quality, but we're also still in a competitive pricing game. So we still have to be the best. And sometimes we're fighting to be a lot of times we're fighting to still be the cheapest, right?
Yeah.
So there has to be bends and there has to be breaks. And like, you got to give us the time to do the quality that we want. And if you want a 4-day job done in 2, something's going to sacrifice. Like we're not just
Yep.
sandbagging it. We want to get out of the job just as fast as anybody else. But if you want it done in this amount of time, something's going to sacrifice. I tell people all the time, like, I don't know how much video games you play. I don't play a bunch, but I did a little bit, right? And like, so any sports game where you can like build a figure, right? So you're playing a football game and you get to build your character. Well,
Mm.
I'm gonna build a running back. Well, let me make this guy the biggest and the most strongest guy ever. Well, okay. I mean, he's good to run forward, but that's it. Like he's too big.
Right.
He can't move. He's unable. He's got no agility, right? Or he's too slow, right? If you overdo anything, something else is going to sacrifice. You get too big and strong, you're not going to be fast and flexible. If you're too flexible, you're not going to be big and strong, right? So,
Yeah.
like, if you push the extremes on anything, something is going to shift the tide. Something's going to shift. So I tell people that all the time.
Yeah. And look, there's some things like there's natural processes that can't be changed. I learned that. So, like the grocery business, when you think about it, when you go to the grocery store, you just want to buy your groceries and go home. You don't care about a truck being late or this or that. You just want your shit. And like, that's got it. That's the business. Totally understand it. And so when you're out of something, we would call and twist suppliers' arms. Like, I need you to get a truck under this right now. Like today, like while I'm on the phone, schedule some fucking transportation and get this stuff to me. And so I kept rising the ranks. And so I wound up working in all different parts of the store because grocery is different than produce, which is different than meat, which is different than service deli. And I wound up working in all of those. So at one point I was doing something with dairy and we were out of this yogurt. And I called the supplier. I'm like, I need you to get this yogurt moving immediately. And they said, we can't ship it for 3 days. And I go off on my, big guy tirade and you've got to get it to me and I can't wait 3 days and blah, blah, blah. He goes, no, you don't understand. It's not yogurt for 3 more days. I'm like, time out. Walk me through that. He's like, look, we put bacteria in a cultured bacteria into a process and it takes 3 days to ferment to the point that it's yogurt, and I can't release it from the plant until that fermentation process has happened, and it runs through my quality assurance testing. It doesn't matter if you want it or not. The FDA won't allow me to send it to you for 3 days. And I was like, well, shit, that makes a lot of sense. But I'd never really thought about it because I don't make yogurt for a living, you know? And
Yeah,
so
if I listen to the hothead, I'm gonna kill a bunch of people.
exactly.
You're not gonna be happy. You know, like you're gonna
Yes.
get you a yogurt, and a bunch of people are gonna die, and you're gonna lose your business. You know, yeah, you might not. You know, you
Exactly.
might not want to try to force my arm on this one. You know, you might want to
Yeah.
listen to me. I'm kind of the yogurt expert. You know.
Exactly. And that it made me think about it when you're talking about epoxy, because that stuff's got a cure for a certain amount of time. Like it just does. Doesn't matter whether you like it or not. That's how fucking science works. That's how the natural world works. And it is what it is.
Yeah, we do facilities all the time, you know, and they're like, well, how soon can we get a forklift on it? I'm like, if you put a forklift on it anytime before 48 hours, you're going to have forklift marks in your floor. You know, like, this is how it works, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I
So,
love
you
that.
know, there's rules to the game, and just like you said, you know, investors and there's people who think they know, and
Yeah.
there's people who really do.
That's right.
Right? There's people that think they know everything. They're the smartest one, you know, the architects, the guys that are the big investors that I've flipped so many homes. I know it all. Like, well, guess what?
Yeah.
You ain't an electrician. You know, like you might know some electrical, but I'm an electrician. I know how it works, you know? So like, you know, there's all of those people in this world. There's people who think they're experts and then there's really experts, right? And sometimes you gotta listen to the fucking expert, you know? That's why you're talking
Yeah.
to them.
Yeah, it's so funny too because I say it all the time, and I say that I'm joking, but I'm not really joking at all. It's too bad you didn't know me when I was 20 because I was so fucking smart when I was 20. I knew everything when I was 20, and you didn't even have to ask me. I would just tell you. That's how smart I was. I just knew everything, and so now I'm 53, and it turns out I've gotten a lot dumber over the years because I don't know shit. And so I find myself now I'm a well-traveled. I've got a lot of experience in a lot of stuff. And when someone asks me about a subject that I have a whole bunch of knowledge about and a whole bunch of experience in, I find myself being very cautious about how I answer. I used to say, well, this is how it works. And instead, I now say, hey, look, there's a lot of variables to this. I have a lot of experience in this. In my experience, here's what I've seen. Your situation might be different and it might turn out differently than this. When I was 20, I would have just definitively told you exactly what was going to happen because I was so fucking smart when I was 20. And what I've learned is the world works in different ways, man, and you don't know how things are going to work out. So even when I really do know a lot more about something than most people do know about it, I qualify my responses a lot these days. And there's some like you said, hey, it takes 48 hours for this to cure. You're gonna have forklift marks. That's a definitive statement you can make because you've got 20 plus years of experience in it. But there's a lot of shit out there that gets kind of mushy, and you don't know. Like you don't know. I can tell you what I've learned, and you can take that for what it's worth, and you can make your own decisions. But I don't really know how it's going to turn out because I don't have a crystal ball, like nobody does.
Well, in this world of information, everybody feels like they can be an expert by
Yeah.
asking Siri, you know? Well, the case is Siri isn't always right, and Siri might have this part of information, but they don't have the rest of it, right? So, you know, you're spoken from a man of experience. You know, just because you know something doesn't mean you know everything. And the intelligent person is inquisitive. The
That's right.
intelligent person wants to know your perspective because you ain't learning shit when you're running your mouth. You're learning when you're listening, you know?
That's
So
right.
the,
That's
the
right.
intelligent person is more inquisitive, and they say that's why you got two ears and one mouth, right? You know, you're supposed to listen twice as much as you're speaking. You know, some
Use them
people don't get that,
yeah.
you know. The
Use them
older you
proportionally.
get, the more you learn that, right? The more you like shut up and listen, you know, and then put your fucking 2 cents in.
If you need to at all. A lot of times I say nothing. A lot of times I just listen. And
Especially when you hear the dumb shit. When you hear the dumb shit and they know and you know that they're your 20-year-old version of yourself. You're like, oh, it's fucking pointless. I'm not even gonna fucking start, you know? I know this guy knows it all, so like I'm
yeah,
not even fucking gonna try. you know?
Good for you, buddy. Good for you.
Yeah.
Welcome. Just wait for life to kick you in the teeth because it's coming. I'll be over here waiting for you when you figure it out.
Yeah. Let me know when you want to when you want to know from me, holla at me. You know, right now I know you don't even care. So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna
But
waste my breath.
yeah, but on that topic, you actually took some of the things you learned and wrote a book about them. I'd love to talk a little bit about your book.
Once again, it's one of those just kind of aha moments. I was literally taking a Sunday jog and something said, Jake, write a book. And I'm like, all right, well, shit, what about? And I'm thinking I was just about to turn 40. And I was like, man, like that seems cool, but it also seemed like something that I do maybe in my 50s after I've accomplished all of this stuff or something, right? Be more accomplished to write a book, and I was like, well, what are you gonna write a book about? And I was like, write about what you know, write about what are the changes that happened in your life. What are the things, what are the monumental things in your life that shifted your life? What are the biggest lessons? Not that you just learned and it was more information that you gathered, but what are the lessons you learned that changed your life? What are the ones that you were headed this direction? You learned this lesson either the good way, the hard way, the bad way, or the expensive way, and it shifted you, right? And it changed that direction of your life, So that's what, and I started thinking about it, and literally before I finished my run, I had stopped a couple of times and I started jotting down notes. And by the time I came back from my run, I literally had like three-quarters of the book in ideas, and I set to it, and literally I had a vacation coming up. It was a trip to Brazil. My wife's from Brazil, so we go every couple years, and it's not a weekend trip anytime you go over there, right? So we typically spend a
Mm.
couple weeks, and so I had 2 weeks in Brazil, and I had heard, I'm kind of for a while, I was a big Grant Cardone guy, and I still love the guy. He's, take him for what he's worth. But he was a big mentor to me at a certain pivotal point in my life, and I heard him say he wrote a book in like 7 hours one time. And I was like, well, shit, if Grant Cardone could write a book in 7 hours, I could write one in 2 weeks. And I told myself,
All
all right,
right.
you have, I said, all right, you got 2 weeks where you're on a minimal amount of work, right? I'm not in my day-to-day work that I'm doing every single day. I got 2 weeks vacation and minimal amount of work. Finish this book. And literally in that 2 weeks, I had the rough draft completely written. Now, of course, after that, I got with a team and I helped refine it and turn it into something that I felt is extraordinary and really a very cool piece. It's 27 life-changing lessons to help you elevate beyond the ordinary. The title of the book is Make It Extraordinary. It used to be our flooring motto. Make it extraordinary. It turned into my life motto. And once I had that book, when I was, there was no other title for it. It was Make It Extraordinary. And then the 27 life-changing lessons was in no particular, I wasn't shooting for a number. It's the lessons that changed my life, So their childhood lessons, their teenage lessons, their early entrepreneur lessons, and their later entrepreneur lessons. They go in chronological order. It's a bunch of short stories. It's a quick, easy read. I call it a plane ride read. So, 2, 3 hours, depending on how fast you read, and you'd be done with it. So a bunch of quick short stories, and it starts off with the basis of a lesson, short story, and then a recap of that lesson. And I'm super, super, super happy about it. Super, super proud about it. My first book to write it, knock it out, and I definitely call it a door opener. It's already opened quite a few doors for me, and I believe it'll continue doing so. Um, it started a lot of this podcast journey, right? I wasn't doing podcasts before I wrote the book, and once I wrote the book, I did one or two, and now it's a staple. Now I pretty much do at least a podcast a week, and it's just this make it extraordinary journey turn into my life's mission, right? So my flooring business is my baby. It's what pays the bills, but this passion is what drives me. This passion is going to be my legacy. This is, this is what I feel is going to define me, is changing lives, helping people find out what that extraordinary version of life is for them. Everybody's version is different. Mine's different than yours. Yours is different than mine. Hers is different than his, right? So everybody has their own version of what that extraordinary life is to them, and it's achievable. Doesn't make it easy, right? Depends on what kind of version you setting for yourself, but it's all achievable. And the first thing is just defining that version, right? What is it that you want? What is it that would make your life extraordinary, right? When you define it, then you can start working towards it. Then you can start building it. You start putting the blocks in place, start reverse engineering it, right? So um, it's the start of my journey of helping people find and define that in their life, and it's 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 already working. It's already in play. I get people that have been inspired and made major life changes because of it and because of the other things I'm doing. And it's just one of those things that, like I said so many times in this interview, I listen to that inner conscience. I didn't have to argue with it. It didn't have to tell me twice. It told me once. But listen, and now it's led me on so many of these different journeys. Like, you don't know what that one thing is going to lead you on, but it's your voice, your inner conscious. Fucking Jiminy Cricket. There's a reason they made the movie about it, man. It's listen to your fucking conscience, man, because it's telling you something that is going to guide your life. It's going to guide your soul, you know and if there's any, it's, I definitely call it one of my superpowers, man. I listen to it, and whether I listen to it and it learns, teaches me a tough lesson that fucking hurts, that is tough and struggles, right? Or it teaches me something that just turns into something completely amazing that you didn't even expect to happen from that. Like, you don't know where it's going to go, but the one thing that's for sure, if you don't act on it, it can never happen, you know? So, it's definitely one of those things that I had no idea where it was going to start taking me, but I believe that was one of the pivotal moments in changing my life into what's I call moving into the legacy play of my life.
I love that. I love the passion that it evokes in you when you talk about it, because you can't fake that shit. It's good stuff too. And I love the fact I talk about it a lot. And I love that you mentioned it unprompted. That's different for everybody. And you get to decide what it is for you. But to Jake's point, you got to listen when it calls out to you. Like, you can't be afraid of it. You can't run from it. You've got to embrace it and you've got to go after it. And like he just said, sometimes it might not be fun. Sometimes it might not be easy. Sometimes it might be a tough lesson, but it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. I love how you talk about it. I love that you wrote the book. Can you share one of your lessons that we haven't talked about yet on this podcast that's in the book?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this book is super super relatable. Whereas just about anybody from any walk of life can grab a couple lessons and truly relate with them, right? And one of the monumental ones to me is it didn't happen to you; it happened for you. It started off as uh, well, the premise of the lesson is I got fired one day, and because I was bullshitting on a job and wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. I was a teenager, just kind of fucking off with the rest of the guys, and I got fired. And it was a firing that I could have clearly gotten my job back from. I had worked with the guy for a long time through high school. Could have easily went back and said, "I'm sorry, can I have my job back?" And I did. And I could have. But I went home that day and my mom seen me laying on my bed and it was midday and she's like, "What the hell are you doing home?" I was like, "Oh, I got fired from my job." And she's like, so what the hell are you doing laying in your bed? I said, what you want me to do? I just got fired. She said, go out over on the Peters Road, which is this industrial road in our town. And she's like, go here, 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 here. Don't come home till you got a job, you know? And then that's what led me to my offshore career, you know? So that was just one of those pivotal moments. I could have done what so many people did and went back to the boss and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, boss," and blah 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 and got my job back, right? But that happened. Mom seen it. She's like, fuck that. Get your ass out of bed. Don't come home till you got a job. And then that's what led to my offshore career, right? And those little things in life that you don't know where that turn is gonna take you. And it did. And because I didn't do what the norm is and either try to get that job back or go try to get another job just like it, right? It led to that life change, which brought me to these different countries, got to see these different countries, got to do these different things, which then led me to my other flooring business, right? So like when we said it multiple times, when they're laying on their deathbed and they're only regretting to themselves. You know why? Because they're regretting the things that themselves told them to do that they didn't listen.
Mm,
Like nobody else can live that regret other than them because they were the ones that were supposed to do it. And we've repeated it. Your main staple is action, 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 right? Without action, you could only have regret. Like you could have mundane mediocrity or regret.
yes.
I choose action, and win, lose, or draw, there's no regret when you choose the action.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and you'll appreciate this as a wrestler. I have three sons. You said you have daughters. I have sons. And my dad my dad taught me pretty early on. He said, Joe, if a guy's tough, he doesn't have to tell you he's tough. He'll just kick your ass. You don't have to worry about the guy running his mouth a lot. That ain't the guy to worry about. And I told my sons the same thing that you've got to take your shots in life. It's that's what will get you where you want to go to. And I would much rather you guys try and fail than not try. Trying and failing, perfectly acceptable in our house. It's a badge of honor. And in fact, I would submit that if you haven't failed, you're not actually really trying. Because if you haven't pushed yourself to the point that you failed, you're coasting. You're being safe. You're being a pussy. You're being wishy-washy. You're not living a life of fulfillment. You're just not. If you haven't failed, you're not pushing hard enough, plain and simple. And I think it's so valuable to, like, I use walking as an analogy, right? So at no point, we all learned to walk at some point. And nobody did it. Nobody stood up and walked across the room. Like, we tried to pull ourselves up. We fell down. We pulled ourselves up, stood for a couple seconds, fell down, tried to take a step, fell over and hit our head. At no point during that process did people say, I don't know, maybe you're not a walker. Maybe you're just a crawler. Maybe you should just crawl the rest of your life, right? But as a kid, we encourage trying and failing. As an adult, we all run from it. Like if you're walking in the airport and you toe pick and you stumble, what's the first thing you do? You look around and see if everybody saw you. Oh, I don't want to look stupid. Fuck, I've been a pretty good career out of looking stupid in certain situations, man. Like I have been put in situations where I didn't know how to do the job, but they knew I would figure it out. And they're like, we need someone that's got broad shoulders and is willing to push through this and cut through all the shit and figure this out. And we picked you. And so that puts you in situations where you're like, son of a bitch. I don't know. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to get this done. And this was pre-Google, pre-YouTube. There wasn't, a single source of truth like the internet where you could type a couple of words into a computer and get all sorts of information and mentors. Like it's so easy now to get access to information. Back then it was like you had to start asking people, picking up the phone and calling people. You had to eat shit and call people you didn't like because you knew they knew. Like that was part of the deal. And I'm a better person for all of that because I went through those trials and I went through those situations and I got better from those situations, largely because I failed and it was tough. And that's where I think the magic actually happens. I don't even think it. I know that's true.
I got three words that come to mind, and And I never even thought of it in this way until you said it. And my dad would tell me all the time, figure it out. Was he being an asshole? No, figure it out. You gotta figure it out, right? And so many people and that isn't happening these days because all you got to do is ask Google and ask Siri, and nobody's figuring it out. One of the scariest parts, they say, the doctor that's going to be working on you in 10 years passed everything through Chat GBT.
Mm,
Like they are not figuring it out anymore. Somebody else is giving them the answer. Like they no longer have to decipher through and figure it out as much as every other generation had to because it's so easy. The information is at your fingertips. Like how many people these days like DIY is at its all-time high because anybody can figure it out because they can YouTube it or they can Google it, and
yeah.
most things, other than damn heart surgery, somebody who never ever would have learned how to change a outlet or something could watch a video and change an outlet. Like you no longer have to figure things out the hard way in so many cases. And it just made me think about how many times my dad told me, figure it out, son. And he knew the answer, but he wanted me to figure the shit out,
He's not helping
and
you by giving you the answer.
yeah, you know. And so that's very cool. I can't wait to show him that part, man, because that just made me think of him. How many times he told me that shit, just figure it out, son. You know?
That's awesome. And good on your dad, too, by the way.
Yeah, so that's what, and I've got three girls and I got two that live with me now that are younger, and I've got one older one that I've had to, co-parent with an ex, and that was kind of rough, and you have to learn this balancing act of being tough and stern, and I could be so much tougher on these little ones. I'm big softy, plenty enough too, but I also can be more tough, right? I can have my tough moments because I know they're sleeping under this bed and they're gonna wake up tomorrow and we're gonna hug each other. Whereas I had to play so much more of a balancing act with my older daughter, because I would get her for the weekend or I'd only
Yeah.
have her for the night, and you couldn't be the same asshole that my dad was to me that I loved and cherished. I couldn't be that in so many times, so I chose not to be that, to not have my daughter leave and like, fuck that, I ain't never coming back to see dad again. So with my younger daughters, I can balance that so much better. I can be super tough, knowing like I don't care if you're mad at me, right? We're gonna get over it. We'll be fine again. But I can be more tough and I can be more assertive in those situations where I had to play so much more of a finer line, or I chose to play so much more of a finer line with my eldest daughter because of that situation, and that was tough, because my wife's pretty tough as well. She was raised on a damn farm in Brazil, and like literally
Mm.
like old school. She had a fucking outhouse when she was a kid, like so so like she didn't have the luxuries that I say we were lower middle class, and they were, they had nothing and they had everything at the same time,
Yeah, right.
right? you know, had nothing and had everything, right? And that's kind of a beautiful thing as well, So to be able to raise these two young girls together with their mom and have the same parenting kind of backgrounds of tough and sternness is such a different blessing that I had to walk so much more of a tightrope with my first child.
Yeah, different variables at play there for sure. Raising three sons, I always, when they got, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years old, somewhere in there, whenever they're ready for it, I told them all the same thing. I said, look, I'm your dad. I'm the only guy in the world that can be your dad. I'm not your friend. I'm not your buddy. It's not my job. I'd love it if we get along while you're growing up. That'd be awesome. But if we don't, if I have to trade that for you learning how to be good men and being respectful and working hard, if I had to sign a contract today that said your boys are going to hate your guts for the next 10 years, but they're going to grow up to be good men and good members of society, I'd sign that fucking contract immediately because that's that
I'm
I'm the
good
whole,
with it, son. You ain't
Yeah.
gotta like me. I'm good with it. This is my job, you know?
I'm the only one that can do it. I'm the only
Yeah.
one. And I always told him too, I love you enough that I'm going to tell you the truth. And that's not always going to be fun to hear, but I'll always tell it to you. And even with that approach, and my wife's no pushover either. She is, I mean, don't get me wrong, she's feminine and she's an awesome mother and she's all of those things, but she's a tough lady too. Like you're not going to fuck with her. I can tell you that. And we still feel like we were too soft on him sometimes. We look back and go, fuck, we probably should have let him fight and scrap and struggle in that situation instead of bailing him out. And look, they turned out great. Two of them, my boys are 30, 27, 25. They've all got good jobs. Two of them own homes. Like they got good shit going on in their life. But you look back on it and go, I don't know, maybe I was too soft in some situations. It's hard though. It's a hard
Well,
line to
it's
walk.
it's how we were raised and how our parents were raised before that, and this life is forever evolving, and you have to be somewhat nimble in it, and me and my current wife, when we first got together, I was still had the my 18-year-old was like 7, right? So what I had to try to balance between that and the baby mama, she didn't understand. And it's like, look, I agree. That's the way I want it to be, but I gotta balance this thing so my damn kid wants to see me.
Yeah, right.
So like, there was definitely a lot of those struggles, right? It's like I trust me, I agree, but I'm trying to have my kid still love me. She's only here for 2 days.
Yeah.
So that was definitely it. But I'm so proud of the girl. She's grown up to be. She's 18. She just started college, and she's a great, amazing girl. And God knows I'm blessed because she isn't doing any of the things I was doing at her age, and so I'm so lucky.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
Truly
Um,
blessed. So I did something right, or just got lucky, one or the other. I think it's a combination.
yeah, it's probably both. It's probably both. Probably did a lot of good stuff, and yeah, good genetics, right? You got some of that, some of your uh, ex's good genetics in there as well. So
Yeah, that's what I said. If you get the best of both of us, you're doing good. If you get the minimal of the worst of us, then you're doing great.
exactly, exactly. So yeah, I was like we cover a lot of ground on our podcast, and I love our conversations. I feel like I ask good questions. I feel like we get a lot of good topics out there, but I ain't perfect. I always say I don't live in a glass. I don't throw stones because I live in a glass house, and I don't want to miss a good opportunity when I've got guests on simply because I didn't ask the right questions or I didn't bring up a topic. So I always ask: is there anything I haven't asked you yet, or is there any topic we haven't covered yet that you want to make sure we talk about while we're in front of the audience? And no pressure. If you don't have anything, that's cool. I just want to miss the opportunity while we got you.
You know, I can't think of anything that we necessarily missed. Of course, we can't cover the whole world in one stone, but I think me and you are on the same page, and I'm not afraid to repeat it. It's like, man, listen to your gut, man, and take your shots, man, and so many people that just will never live that life that they have the possibility to live because they're scared to take the shot.
Mm.
Take the shot. Even if you got it all on the line, you don't gotta put your neck in a noose. You can dip your foot in the water if but take a shot, you know, and that's if I can hammer anything home, my life is what it is because I've been blessed in so many ways from the parents and the upbringing and genetics and everything else I was blessed with, but at the same time, I've earned what the hell I got because I take my shots, you know. So, if I could leave anything home, it's that.
Oh, love it. I can love it. Love it. Loved having you on the podcast, Jake. Really appreciate it. And so for the listeners, two things. One, I know that you're in Louisiana, Jake. Or if someone was in the market for flooring that's not in Louisiana, is that anything you can do now, or do they need to be in Louisiana to do business with Extraordinary Flooring?
If you want to do business with Extraordinary Flooring bad enough, we will lay some floors on the fucking moon. Okay? So as long as you can foot the bill, we'll travel. right? So it normally takes somebody who really wants us for us to travel. We do travel. We go to a couple different states. We do some stuff in Florida, some stuff in Texas, stuff in Mississippi, but it's typically a client that knows us, they know our reputation, and they will not have anybody else but us to do it, right? And we have those clients, yeah, we do travel, right? But it's more expensive, there's without a doubt. I got to put guys up, do this, do that. But when you're ready to foot the bill to get extraordinary flooring will show up and deliver.
Love it. So if you're interested in talking to Jake about the flooring business, we'll have that link in the show notes. We'll also have the link to his book, Make It Extraordinary. So if you want to check that out, it's not a big investment in time the way he's talking about it. And I think you can tell from the conversation that there are good lessons in there and good reminders. And that's one of the things I always say is you might know all this shit. Like I know a lot of the stuff that I talk to guests about, but it's so good to have it driven home by other people. And it's so good to be reminded of it because we can all lose sight of things and take our eye off the ball. Or, we all go through cycles in life where every once in a while I need a bucket of cold water thrown on you and go, hey, wake up. And so if you're interested in the book, that link will be in the show notes as well. You don't have to go far to find it. So check it out. Could do a lot worse
Well,
than that.
while it may be cost prohibitive to some people to get extraordinary flooring to come do their floors, what isn't cost prohibitive and what can travel worldwide is the Make It Extraordinary movement that I've got, right? So this is a movement. This is something that I have put out my motivational morning quotes and videos every single day. You can follow me at Make It Extraordinary on Instagram, Facebook, and almost all of the other things. And while extraordinary flooring does my primary bill paying, my legacy move is Make It Extraordinary, where I will inspire and help people achieve their own versions of the extraordinary life. So that, my friend, is worldwide. I can help somebody find that version of their life in the smallest corner of the world, due to this wonderful, amazing thing called the internet. Right.
Yeah.
So that is something that has given me the ability to help people worldwide, and I will and am going to help people worldwide create, define, and achieve their own version of the extraordinary life. And if you want anything to do with that, you could DM me and you could start following me at Make It Extraordinary on Instagram and all of the other handles. If you want a Make It Extraordinary life checklist, you can go to my website, makeitextraordinary.co, and the book is on Amazon. Make It Extraordinary, 27 life-changing lessons to help you elevate beyond the ordinary. Who wants to be ordinary when you could be extraordinary? Let's go.
Love it. We'll include all those links. We'll get those from Jake. We'll put them in the show notes so you don't have to write it down. You don't have to look it up. Go down to the show notes, click on the link, take you right to his Instagram, subscribe. You can reach out to him. Love it. We want as many people living purposeful lives as possible. Jake's doing exactly the same thing we're trying to do here, and we're all going to be better off. We work together to try to help each other out. So just go right down to the show notes, and you'll be able to find those links there. So Jake, thank you so much for coming on, man. I absolutely loved our conversation. Love what you're doing. And when you send me those links, I'm going to subscribe because I want to see your stuff too. I'm excited about it myself.
Awesome, Joe, man. This was awesome. Really, really enjoyed it. I think me and you could talk for hours. Be nice.
For
It'd be
sure.
nice. We sit on a porch somewhere and drink a few beers over it because we can keep going, man. So I love what you're doing. Thank you for having me as a guest. It's truly a blessing and a great opportunity, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, love it, man. Feelings completely mutual, and I really appreciate you coming on and spend some time with us. Thank you so much.
All right, man. Let's link up.
All right, man. Have a great
Make it
week.
extraordinary, Joe.
All
Later.
right. See ya. Great job, Jake. That was awesome. Fucking awesome. I
Yeah, man,
loved it.
I really love that. That was good. That
Yeah.
was just good flow and good stuff. And me and you are what and what. So I know your listeners are gonna enjoy it and appreciate it. And that's good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And I appreciate you putting all the stuff in there at the end so that we can get people over to Make It Extraordinary. And like I said, we're trying to do the exact same thing, like impart life lessons and help people live a more meaningful and purposeful life. Like the world's going to be a better place the more people we have doing that. And we have a responsibility to pass on what we've learned before we check out. I love what you're doing.
You said it. We got to keep passing the torch, man. The only way to, save some of those lost souls is to give them guidance, man. Pass that torch, show the light. So, like I said, while as for as many things as we got to be concerned about with these generations that are coming, there's still people out there that are going to keep changing the world, and so I ain't giving up hope on it, and we'll there'll still be plenty men and women that'll be inspiring, and hopefully that'll be enough.
Yeah, well, there's lots of good things too. It's not all negative, but we got to get the work ethic back. I think that's a big one. Work ethic and family values, they matter, and it doesn't matter if people want to agree with that or not. It's the truth, and the more we can hammer that home, more people we can get doing that, the better the world's going to be. So I love what you're doing. I want to support it any way I can.
Awesome, man. What's your handles on social and stuff?
It's all pretty much salty ginger talk. Yeah, so
Okay.
we're on Twitter. I don't do much on Twitter, to be honest. We post a quote of the day. We've got a newsletter. We do short video every day. We do that on Instagram. We do it on Facebook. We do it on TikTok. We do the quote on X, but I don't think we post a lot of videos on X. But yeah, we're cranking shit out daily because like if you just pound it, pound it, pound it, it starts to resonate after a while. It takes a little bit to ramp it up, but like everything else you've done that I've done, you just got to keep at it and you wind up figuring out ways to be successful.
Some people are looking for overnight success, man. I'm just following my path, and it's gonna take me where I need to go. You
That's
know.
exactly right. It doesn't, it's no different in this than anything else that we've learned about. So keep doing what you're doing. And like I say, you got a new subscriber for me because as soon as I get your stuff, we'll subscribe as well.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Definitely a pleasure, Joe. Appreciate it,
Yeah,
man. Give me as much heads up as you can, so I'll make sure we post everything the same way. And we'll be tagging each other. We need to collaborate on some stuff when it comes out. Not just tag each other, but let's collaborate. That's the
for
best way
sure.
to
Yeah, I'm all about
best
it.
way to
I'm
grow
actually doing
audiences, making those collaborations.
I love it. I'm doing a course right now. I'm putting together a course with another guy that was on the podcast, and we're going to do that in like mid-October. And it's targeted at young men who are kind of just floating and thinking, hey, what's it all about? Like I don't have meaning, I don't have purpose, and we want to give them a free. We're not charging anything for it, but I want to kind of smack them upside the head and say, hey, you got to be a man about this stuff. You gotta take your shots. Like whining and crying about it ain't going to fix it. You got to take action if you want to fix it. So
I love
I'd love
that.
to do
If there's
something,
any, if there's
whatever. I'd love to do
anybody
something
that I
similar.
want to
Yeah.
inspire, it's the young men, right? They
Yep.
need it. Like that's like, so many people think they know it all, but if you can get, when you find the ones that actually are listening, right? Most of them it's like, yeah, 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 I know, old man, old man, old man, but when you find the ones that actually spark their ear up and you see that they're inspired, that lights me up. I got a
Me
few of
too.
those guys in my circle and that just lights me up anytime I know they're listening and they're inspired.
Yeah, that's what's it about. That's what it's about for me too. So yeah, I'd love to do something. We'll stay in touch. We'll figure out something. We can certainly collaborate on posting and stuff, but there's something else for us out there to work on together.
I'm down. I'm down. I love that.
Yeah.
Anything to do with that, man. I'm down.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
All right. All right, Joe. Appreciate it, man. It's a pleasure.
All right. Thanks, Jake. Have a great week.
Later, man. Talk to you
All
soon.
right. See ya. Okay, guys. So, yeah, Jake did not disappoint. Did a great job. Loved having him on the podcast. Loved hearing his stories about uh, making his way out into the world and realizing that he needed to find something different, going to work for somebody else and saying, hey, this isn't going to cut it. No business experience, but starts up a business and is successful now, but it fought his way through multiple stages where it was dicey at times and didn't quit, didn't give up, figured out how to solve problems, figured out how to tackle stuff, took all those life lessons that he had from business, from personal life, put them into a book that is available to you, and just really appreciate him coming onto the podcast and talking about all of those things. So loved having Jake on. He and I stayed on after we stopped recording probably won't be the last time you see Jake. We're going to work on a couple things together. Make sure you go over to Instagram and follow him and make it extraordinary over there. We're subscribers now as well. So super excited. Really love having Jake on the program. And thank you so much for spending some time with us. James puts it up over here every day. Head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All of our podcast episodes are there. Links to all our social media accounts are there. We publish a newsletter every weekday you can subscribe to there. Make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe to our podcast, whatever platform you consume it on. We're going to keep finding awesome people like Jake. They're going to keep giving you awesome tips and things they've learned to help you build the life that you want. You don't want to miss any of that awesome stuff. So make sure you catch our next episode. We will see you there.